Yes. So how's it going? Quarantine
Wow,
life.
that's a loaded question. See, the first 3 days was really great because I've been on set now for almost a year because of Chichore and then 83. Um, and it was like, wow, I finally have time to myself. But then 1 week later, the walls start closing in on you and you feel like I need to get out. But jokes apart, when you read about what's going on in the news and how different stratas of society are dealing with this, you realize that you're really blessed just to have a roof over your head.
Right. And what are you like? What are you doing these days? Like at home? Are you like? Do you stay alone? Like you have to do the household chores.
Yes, I do. I live with a cousin in Bombay, and so there is someone that I have in the house, but I do miss being with family at this time. The great thing about being an actor is that when you're not on set, we're used to working from home. So it's not like we have an office life to get through. So you do have your schedules and your routines in place. I have a film coming up which is called Loop Lapeta. So it's given me time to work on the character. And what I would have ordinarily had to do in about 2 weeks' time, I've now had 5 weeks to do it. But this is also a lot of free time. So I've used it to read some more and to catch up on Netflix. I am now an expert at a home workout without weights. I've also tried very unsuccessfully to cook, which isn't working too well.
I think this is the time everybody would and should learn cooking.
Yes.
Like eventually.
Definitely.
That's the thing.
And you realize the only thing that has prevented you from doing it so far is laziness. That's all. Because when you have to, everyone starts.
Right. So we will just start off with your quick questions.
Sure.
So the first question is, what makes the bad boy so cool, especially in movies?
I think what makes bad boys cool is the fact that they're rebels. Like they don't care about the rules in films. One of my favorite quotes about bad guys is, "It's the bad guy who has a plan. The good guy just wants to stop him." So. Yeah,
that's
what
so
makes them cool.
Perfect. Yeah. And also, like, what made you opt for that role in Mardani? Like, it was a starring role, and it was so great. Like, it was a villain's role, basically.
Thank you.
You can't even say that it's a great role.
I would like the way I really looked at that character was the part of an anti-hero, purely because there was no other male lead in the film. And what I tried to do was find aspects that make him more human rather than just be a caricature bad guy. But I like that people believe that I had a choice in the matter. Like it was YRF and it was Pradeep Sarkar and Rani Mukherjee. It was just such a big opportunity. I had been in Bombay for about 3 years at the time and I had gone through hundreds of auditions without getting parts. And this was just a massive break. वो कहते हैं ना that मतलब opening करने को मिली थी and पहले बॉल पर छक्का मारना जरूरी था. And I had to do that.
Right. And who are some of your like favorite villains in Bollywood?
Villain again, like when I get a part that is quote unquote a negative part, I look at it more like an anti-hero, like an antagonist rather than a villain. And like actors who've done these roles fabulously, I would say is Shah Rukh Khan in Bazigar is someone who definitely comes to mind. Irfan Khan in Hasil. And a more contemporary example would Ranveer. Ranveer did a great job in Padmavati recently with a negative character.
Right. And also, what has changed for the Bollywood villain? Like, you know, like first you had those Shakti Kapoor, those kind of roles, and then coming from there to these kind of roles, which you can call them anti-heroes as well, and not just a villain. So what has changed from the villain to the anti-hero?
I feel, with all due respect to Shakti sir, because he's a great actor and he did like comedy and he did like negative parts right through. Also, Shraddha might be watching this. I feel like what's definitely changed is that the audience is more into real performances. Like they don't want something that becomes a caricature. And I think the onset of digital platforms like Netflix and Amazon play a big role in this because now it's all like you will compare your viewing experience to, let's say, a Joker abroad, which is like the whole film is based on the negative character. So the audience just expects a lot more and a lot more depth and shades in characters.
Right. And also we had some amazing villains like Amrish Puri playing, Shakti Kapoor playing, and then Shakal. Those are like iconic characters.
Definitely,
I think.
yeah.
And tell me 3 things that don't really work anymore as villains. Like, because those are iconic, but still, which will not work anymore.
3 things that won't work anymore. Normally with a villain, you would have to have like pan stains in the teeth, or you would have like the intro shot would be like a close up of the hand, and there would be a ring on the finger, and it will just be going like those kind of like typical 80s Bollywood, and a shot where the villain's got like a catchphrase like "Mona kahan hai sona." Stuff like that will definitely not work anymore. It will become a comedy instead of a serious film.
Right. And the 3 most challenging things playing a negative role.
One is not to fall into the trap of being a caricature. Definitely. The second one is to try and find some human aspect in him that the audience can relate to. And the third, this is more from an acting point of view, is very often if you get a part where you're not playing a negative role, your backstory won't be in the film. And so you need to create that backstory. Either you jam with the writer, or you have a conversation with the director, or you end up doing it yourself. But you have to find what circumstance in his past made him what he is today. Was there ever a time when he was actually a good guy, and an incident changed that? And that is what's challenging about playing a character like that.
That's how you humanize it, like humanizing the character.
Exactly.
Okay. And then now you're playing Gavaskar in 83.
Yeah.
So tell us something about that. And while researching or while working with him, what are the 3 things that you got to know about him that maybe is not in popular knowledge?
Right. First of all, I'm not a professional cricket player at all. I played gully cricket like most boys do growing up. So I needed to work for about 6 months to get the cricketing stance and the batting style that Gavaskar sir had. And that was a huge challenge. I don't think I worked physically for a role ever to this extent. And when you emulate a real living legend, there are just aspects of the character that you will carry on into your own life. And the 3 things to answer your question was that I read a biography about Gavaskar, and I realized that it's not like he was a born genius. He had to work very hard in order to get where he did. In fact, he was dropped from his school team when he started off playing when he was in school. And over a span of the first time when he was dropped to 2 years later, he became the best schoolboy cricketer in all of India. So from a very young age, he never took defeat to heart. And that is something that I will carry forward with me. The third thing that I remember, the second thing that I remember reading about him is that the first time he scored a test century, I think this was in Pune, he was injured. He was hit with a ball on his thigh, and he went on to make a century. So a setback never held him back. And the third and very endearing thing, we were talking about humanizing a character. He had a very close relationship with his mother. And a great sort of anecdote in his book was that before a Ranji Trophy match, his mom called him on the phone and said that I want you to beat your own personal best record of 324 runs, I think. And he listened to what she had to say, and he went on to do it. Like, he beat that record with 327 runs in the Ranji series. So it was amazing how such a small input from someone he had a deep emotional bond with could transform how he played on the field.
Right. And then what's that one piece of advice or tip that you got from him?
A tip. I remember when we were shooting for 83 in the UK, he came to the set and he came to the field where we were shooting. And I remember, because he used to open for India, what he said was, it's very important the way you carry yourself onto the field. There was a definite swagger that Sunil Gavaskar had when he would walk on. And he's not a very tall gentleman. He's about 5'4", 5'5". But when he walks on, he could be 6'5", because there's that much confidence in his body language that he's representing India and he's opening. And I think that's a lesson not just for cricket, it's for life. Like, how you walk into a room when you're going for a meeting or you're on a date or you're going for a professional interaction, says everything about you.
Right. And what is the most? You also played another like real life character, Sham in Manto. So
Right.
how different it is, like, to play a character who is in present memory, like he's a living person, and to play
Right.
somebody who is not really like in popular memory that much. What are the challenges and the differences?
In both situations, it's a responsibility because you know that even if the person might not be alive, like in the case of Sham Chadda, his family members would definitely be watching, and you have to stay true to who he was. The challenge with a living legend like Sunil Gavaskar is that he might actually be on set, and you're going to get feedback from him on the spot. And when he watches the film, you will have to meet with him. So that's a challenge. But in both the scenarios, what actors try and do is not you're not mimicking who the person is. You're trying to encapsulate what the person stood for, what the soul of the person was, and then portray your version of who he was.
Right. And the next is, what is the most vicious or hurtful feedback you have got while on an audition or...
On an audition, wow. There have been so many. Where do I start? I think the most important thing that I learned during the audition process was that feedback is never negative. Like, you can always grow and learn from it. But since you mentioned the word hurtful, I think the most hurtful thing for an actor is when either the director or the producer, they tell you, we'll get back to you after the audition. And somewhere in you know that get back to you might not ever happen. And most of the times in Bombay, it doesn't. You just read about the fact that someone else got the part, or they went with another actor. So for me, the most hurtful thing probably would be not hearing back, because even if I got some feedback that said, change this line or change your modulation or change this expression, it would help because you can use that. But not hearing back is the most hurtful thing.
Right. And what was your most starstruck moment in Bollywood so far?
Wait, I'll have to think about this for a second. Yes, I remember I went for the preview screening of Fan, the film, and I was in the theater, and Shah Rukh Khan walked into the theater, and that was the first time I saw him. And you know how they say that people have this enigma and aura sometimes, and I really felt that. Like, he's got an energy when he walks into the room, and it's not an energy of being entitled. It's just charming, and I really felt that.
Right.
I think I was starstruck. I was definitely starstruck. Yeah.
Everybody would be.
Yeah.
And what is the best and the worst feedback you have got for your acting that you have used?
Again, acting is such a thing that I feel like everyone has an opinion on it. Like, whether it's a film critic or a journalist, or it could be my building security guard. Everyone says that, yaar, wo wala scene mein na aapko aisa bolna chahiye tha. So I've gotten very used to getting feedback from everywhere. So I wouldn't really divide it into negative or positive, but a really interesting incident that happened with feedback, I would take it as is, I was once at a passport office, and I was in queue, and when I got to the counter, the lady told me, you look like Tahir. He's a very good actor, and you look like him. So I don't think that compliment was meant for me, but I'll take it as indirect feedback.
But did you have to convince her that no, you are the person?
I know, I laughed and I agreed with her. I said, yes, I've heard that a lot of times, and he's an amazing actor. I agree with you.
Awesome. And the funniest incident while auditioning for a role?
For me, it's really important that I've read the script a number of times, and this was one part that I really wanted. I'm not going to name the film, but I had read it, and when I got to the audition, I realized that they don't have, it was a girl who had to play opposite me, and they didn't have a girl to give me the dialogues off camera. So I ended up doing both the guy's part and the girl part. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons I didn't get it, because they probably thought I was crazy. But but that was funny, because to do both the parts in the audition was hard, challenging.
That reminds me of that Kishore Kumar song where he plays the girl and the boy in the same song.
Yeah.
And your biggest regret of not being a star kid?
Regret of not being a star kid. I don't really. I mean, yeah, definitely. One thing is that when I speak to co-actors who have grown up in film families, they start being on a film set at a very young age. Like, maybe they were 8 years old when they went to a film set, or 9 years old. So by the time they're in their late teens, they know everything about a film set. And that is something that I definitely didn't have. I had to get here at my age of 22 and figure things out. But there's a flip side to that. Like, my dad used to be with the Indian Air Force, and so I grew up in my dad was posted all over India, and so I've grown up in Chandigarh, in Gwalior, in Jamnagar, and so as an actor, it's a different kind of toolkit that and an advantage that I have.
Right. And the next question is similar. Like, what is the best part about not being a star kid?
I think it would save me from comparisons. I'm the first one in my family to do this. So no one's going to be like, your uncle did it like this and your aunt did it like this. And so I'll always be the first Tahir Bhasin. So that's an advantage.
Right. And one role that you really wanted to play, but you didn't get it, or it was like before you started your career?
Oh, like that? I would say, can I name two? Can I cheat a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
So,
go ahead.
So Shahid Kapoor in Haider, I thought that was an amazing part.
Yes.
And Shah Rukh Khan in Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na.
That was such a nice.
Yeah, it was such an amazing. Yeah. It was just he was such an everyday guy, and just
so subtle.
Subtle. Yes, it was an amazing film.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we come to the quarantine part of it. What is the most difficult part about being at home for so long, for an indefinite period of time?
What is the most difficult part is that you have to, you're not allowed to meet your friends and your family, and you just have to spend time with yourself and your own thoughts.
Right. And a person is his best company, I have heard. So maybe you're knowing yourself more.
I'm definitely doing things that I wouldn't have time to do otherwise. Like, I'm catching up on reading and like on series that I've never had time to watch. So all of that.
Right. And the last question is, what's the most fruitful thing you have done or learned maybe while like spending time on your own? And what's the most lamest thing you have tried?
The most fruitful thing that I've learned, I've finished 2 books, and the books are called The Power of Now. If anyone hasn't read it, I would really recommend it. And the second one's called The Autobiography of a Yogi, which is a super book. And the lamest thing that I've learned is always have onions at home. Try and have onions, because it's the first thing you run out of when you try and cook. And when the prices, when there's inflation and the prices go up, I can now feel for why it goes up. And another thing that I've learned, which wouldn't be fruitful, I wouldn't put it in the fruit or lame category, but it's also how people who we take for granted so much, like whether it's the person who comes to cook in your house, or it's your driver or your security guard, or on set a spot boy, like they're the backbone of your existence, and how much we take them for granted.
Right. And the last one is, we are doing this HT Salutes, where we are putting out a message for the frontline workers who are still outside doing their job. You have a message for them?
Well, I mean, you are the unseen heroes. Like, I really feel like if you're watching this, or if your family members are watching this, thank you for the time and the fact that some of you are selflessly going out there, and you are really the country's first line of defense. This is a war in which the armed forces are not playing a role, but you are our soldiers. So thank you.
Right. That's awesome. Thanks so much.